started.
Hell
All
yeah.
right.
Welcome to the smartest people in the room. We are glad you are here with us. And if you've been tuning into previous episodes, you know we shine a light on really cool people doing smart things or really smart people doing cool things. Well, today, I am pleased to say we are doing both. Podcasting is one of the fastest evolving sectors of the media world, and today's guests are bending the rules in that space and have created some exciting revenue streams for musical artists. Before we get started, let me take care of some business. First, to the audience, please feel free to introduce yourselves in the chat window. The reason we do these webinars is twofold. First, we want to showcase really smart people and the amazing work they do day to day in the music industry. But the second reason is a bit more nuanced. Many of you know that I am a music industry headhunter. I place music executives in roles throughout the industry. So by definition and function, I help people connect with companies. In this series, my goal is to help you make more connections, and I invite you to take full advantage of that opportunity. Specifically, I invite you to engage with the speakers and the other attendees in the chat of the Zoom. Please introduce yourselves, say hello to your friends, and make some new ones. And ask questions of our speakers. We will do our best to answer as many of those as possible along the way. And please make sure you set your chat to address speakers and attendees, not just speakers. I want to thank our sponsors for without their help, we couldn't do what we do. Thanks to First Horizon Bank, Bufkin Baker, Four Roses Bourbon, the Fairlane Hotel, Tennessee Entertainment Commission, Lightning 100, Tennessee Brew Works, Moo TV, Jive Printing, Project Music, and Cushmasters brand of CBD products. So let's get down to business. Whoops. In today's host seat, we welcome Jared Gutstadt. Jared is a multi-hyphenate producer, writer, inventor, and entrepreneur known for his patented technology, the Jingle Player, and that transformed the TV marketplace vis-a-vis his company, Jingle Punks, which was one of the most highly valued music publishing companies across the media space prior to his exit in 2019. Gutstadt's new production studio platform and network, Audio Up, launched in April 2020 and has built an ecosystem of premium entertainment content within the music and audio space. Producing and creating fictional scripted podcasts, Audio Up's goal is to not only break new music artists, but also to create new avenues for A-list talent. Jared is an ambitious entrepreneur who not only succeeded at launching a new company during COVID, but has managed to thrive. He recently received Adweek's 2020 Producer of the Year Award and Innovator of the Year Award. He is engaged in an array of powerhouse partners and investors this year, from MGM and Primary Wave, Warner Records, and Sony Music, to an array of A-list talent, which includes Dennis Quaid, Miranda Lambert, Lindsay L., Machine Gun Kelly, 24 Golden, Pooh Bear, Tommy Lee, Billy Bob Thornton, Bobby Bones, Tom Green, and Jaleel White, to name a few. The 2021 Audio Up slate is already strong with the recently announced The Playboy Interview and Hero to the Band podcasts. In 2019, with his former company Jingle Punks, he launched his first critically acclaimed podcast, Bear and Banjo, marking a first for the world of media. Bear and Banjo was the first podcast to feature commercial soundtrack and in turn drilled headlines for a game changer in the space. Jared was 2019's ASCAP Award winner for the most published composer for his work on Pawn Stars, The Voice, Ellen's Game of Games, and Project Runway. He has collaborated with Bob Dylan, T-Bone Burnett, Steven Tyler, Lil Wayne, DJ Khaled, and scored 2 sports Emmy nominations for his work on LeBron James' 89 Blocks. Wow, what a bio. Incredible. Welcome, Jared.
Thank you.
And joining Jared as today's special guest is Scarlett Burke. Born in Amarillo, Texas, Scarlett began studying acting as well as writing songs on her mom's guitar at the age of 12, and has since written for Miranda Lambert, Lindsay L., Tyler Rich, and composed music for some of the biggest campaigns in advertising, including Taco Bell's Chasing Gold ad starring Darren Criss, which really moved their stock price, as well as a triple spot Zillow campaign. Her scores have been nominated for Best Country Music Track and Best Americana Artist by the Production Music Association, and have been heard on countless Netflix, ABC, CBS, and Fox series. As an actress, she's appeared on Showtime's Ray Donovan, Lethal Weapon on Fox, and TNT's Animal Kingdom. Scarlett is also co-creator, director, and executive producer of the first of its kind scripted country music series, Make It Up As We Go, available now from Audio Up Media. She stars as Charlotte, an aspiring young songwriter who pursues a career in the music industry alongside country luminaries like Miranda Lambert, Lindsay Ell, and Bobby Bones, as well as Billy Bob Thornton, Dennis Quaid, and a who's who of Nashville music scene. The podcast features an original soundtrack written and performed by Scarlett. Please welcome these two amazing guests to the smartest people in the room. Take it away, Jared.
Oh, wow, those are quite the intros.
Yeah.
Thanks for letting us write those. I'm kidding. Scarlett.
I think you had a little help.
No, I'm kidding. We're happy to be here to talk about, all things podcasting and all things music. It has been a whirlwind. I don't even know what year it is. It's 2021. It feels just like 2020. And when we started this adventure, we had no idea that, we would be making podcasts during the era of COVID. It just so happened that sometimes, bizarre circumstances align, not only in the world, but in media shifts that sort of put you at the right place at the right time. What's been a very challenging time for the music space, for the entertainment space, and for just people in general, sometimes turns into an opportunity to innovate. Fun fact before I get into, getting Scarlett's whole story out of her, my previous business was built out of 2008, the housing crisis imploding and raising money during that time. And for some reason, we just seemed to be at the wrong place at the right time with our, ambitions. And really how this all started was, Scarlett, as a composer and someone who works in the brand space, comes to me with some music. And Scarlett, why don't you tell the first part of how, this all started? Because it really was in parallel with what was happening with Baron and Banjo. And we were starting to get into podcasts with music in them. So why don't you start there, Scarlett? How did this whole podcasting thing happen for you?
Well, I had been writing here in Nashville, and at the time I was living in Los Angeles. And, I was going back and forth and bringing home a suitcase full of songs, basically, and not necessarily songs that were, mainstream radio, but coming from the world of sync, as Jared and I do, it was the idea of just recording them and, you'll find a home for them eventually. And I was at a point in my career as, do I want to be an artist or want to be a songwriter? And do I want to tour? And I was afraid to say that I, at the time, didn't want to tour. And it was this idea of...
Never say that to record labels. Never say that to managers.
That was at the time. At the time.
Yeah.
Have a platform to stand on now, and this would be a project that we would tour if we weren't in COVID. And but it was one of those ideas of like, what's a different way of releasing songs that you wouldn't necessarily get on the radio? And whenever we all every day are glued to our phones, and there's got to be a different way of discovering an artist or a song through the world of our phones. And Jared had just come off of doing the Baron and Banjo project. And so he was like, well, let's just record these songs. And, I have some ideas about, what we can do with this. We recorded at the Village Studios, did a live session, kind of old school style, and knocked out 6 songs, which eventually turned into the soundtrack for a podcast.
But the old school style was also budget constrained. We were like, you get a day in the studio, like Sun Records, that's all we could afford in terms of the development. At that time, I knew that the songs that you brought back were incredible. They just weren't fitting into any obvious lane in Nashville. But I was like, well, let's record them and let's figure it out. But and then what happened next, really?
You said, let's do a podcast. And I said, what's a podcast? How do I find one?
I'll back up for 1 second. So at the time, my brain works in bizarre ways. I had become friends with a few people in the podcast space as Baron a Banjo was launching. Baron a Banjo was unique and novel because it stemmed from essentially the same thing Scarlett said. I made a passion project with my friend Pooh Bear and T-Bone Burnett, and then more people got involved, but no labels really could fit it into a neat and tidy box. And I think that sometimes media and media companies evolve to the point where if it doesn't look like something that is already doing commercially well, it's hard to figure out what to do with it. And
because you have Bob Dylan on there. It was an incredible record.
and
it's like, God, if Bob Dylan can.
We had Bob Dylan. We didn't have Lil Nas X. So we basically, I basically wrote 8 short stories to accompany the podcast and said to iHeart, is this a podcast? And essentially they said yes, greenlit it. And then as I got to know the space better, and feel out what was in the world, I noticed that some of the biggest music podcasts did not have music in them. These were podcasts with music experts like Malcolm Gladwell and Rick Rubin and my friend Jake from Disgraceland, merely talking about music. And I said to Jake, as someone in my previous business created thousands and thousands of music copyrights, why isn't music, available in the podcast? So if they're talking about, a rock star, dying in Disgraceland or, the history of a certain band, well, music licensing is expensive. And in this nascent audio medium, there really was a lot of people talking about music, but nobody making music or musicals. And I'm also a student of media history, and I look at the advent of the Hollywood musical, which really stemmed from, music publishers from vaudeville being involved in this new medium that all of a sudden allowed you to talk on the screen. So musicals, for the sake of musicals, existed because for the first time you could put audio on the screen, and what better to put on it than people singing and dancing. So, what really happened there, as I said to Scarlett, let's look at some, classic archetypes of like films and figure out how to frame this music. And I mean, Scarlett, the discussion we had next was really about 2 things. It was like, we talked about Country Strong once and working.
We're working.
Yeah. So yeah, explain the whole, like how we sort of fictionalize the arc of that, because
the songs came first, so it was really the story arc was sort of within my own songwriting, and so we got the music in front of David Hudgens, who's a huge showrunner, writer, wrote Friday Night Lights, and he loved the music, and that was what sold him. And then he was like, I know what to do with this. And it was really more of focusing on the songwriter's story and, what inspires the songwriter in their daily life to write what we hear on country radio. And so that was really what we leaned into.
It was sort of like a musical in reverse, because typically people have like a book or a story and then they go, let's write a song for act 1, for act 2. We were taking the utility of the music, and you sort of you glossed over a very monumental part of this thing, which was we had never had a meeting really ever, either of us, with a big Hollywood showrunner. This guy, and we said to Scarlett, myself and WME, like, who's somebody that you would want to work with? And you really, I think immediately gravitated towards David Hudgens because he had worked on Friday Night Lights, and you and I got thrown into a meeting at a very bizarre meeting. In retrospect, we were very lucky because we didn't really come in there with like a synopsis of the season or a 9-episode arc. We said, here's some music, here's an idea. And he was crazy enough to go, I love this. Let's, partner on it. And I think that really stemmed from the fact that he saw the opportunity to tell stories through the songs, but also he's like, what is podcasting? Because we were not, I think most people, anybody that we approached during this thing immediately, in the middle of last year or even before would go, oh, podcasting, I sort of know what that is, but I don't want to like have, a show where I'm like yapping away with my friends, on a talk show. That's not my thing. And you and I really had like a big hurdle to sort of educate people as to what we were doing, because no one had really done anything like this.
No, I mean, and I hadn't either. I didn't know what we were getting into, but walking onto the Sony lot that day reminded me of just going to an audition with that feeling of, well, this could bomb.
It seemed so implausible that anything real would happen with that I wasn't even nervous, because it just didn't seem like, honestly,
Right.
like it just seemed like, oh cool, we're gonna like meet this guy and he'll just tell us, we'll call you.
Right. Which he did rather quickly that afternoon, and said he was, all in. And I think from the world that Jared and I were coming from with, writing in the sync world, you're so used to writing to picture and from a pitch. And so having the music all written prior, and I mean, that's such a rare opportunity, because now with season 2, it's unfortunate we can't have that experience again. We're going to be writing to the characters and to the storyline from the first season. So it was a really unique opportunity, in that I don't, seasons moving forward won't be done the same way. They'll be, it'll be just as special.
More like a real, like the way the musicals used to be done, because we sort of did it in reverse. But for anyone who's uninitiated to the actual podcast that we created, just for a moment, will you explain what it is and what happens in each episode? Because some people still that are very close to our company or our friends, I don't think knew what we were making, even by description. So how would you explain it?
Are you asking for yourself?
I want to know what's in it, because I would love to check it out. Thank you.
So what the story starts out in Amarillo, Texas, which is where I'm from. The character is loosely based off me, and other, characters are loosely based off Nashville characters, like Billy Bob Thornton's loosely based off Luke Dick, or Emily Turner is loosely based off Nicole Gallion, who Jared and I wrote with for this project. And so she starts out in Amarillo, and it's about her journey of moving from Amarillo, Texas into the world of Nashville, and what those writers' rooms are like, and really just navigating her way around the world of the songwriting world of Nashville.
And really how one song can change your whole life. It's sort of a fairy tale, because you arrive in Nashville without a dollar to your name, with a very thin plan in real life and in the podcast. And by the end of real life and the podcast, you essentially had a song cut by the biggest female artist, arguably, of the last decade, or of all time in the country space. There's like, Miranda is in that hallowed group of like Dolly, Shania. It was pretty incredible. So this was I look at it from a macro perspective as like, this was an opportunity to tell your story, as a vehicle for artists of the future to reach people in a different way. The music business is tough. The music business is tougher than ever. And at the end of this thing, we're going to go back and explain how we did it, but you essentially wrote the story of how you got your first record out, how you got your first cuts in Nashville. And it was kind of an incredible transformative moment for the medium.
Art and vice versa. And, Brooks Hudgens and his dad, David Hudgens, who wrote the script, I knew we had something special when I read the first episode, because they did their research around Amarillo, and she's playing at the Golden Light, and and just their research around Nashville, and again, like all the songwriting world, and just the way that they brought these characters to life and told the songwriter's story. I think there's so much curiosity, and like, look at the success of Songland. That was taking off as we were getting into production with this. And I thought, that's a good, it's a good sign. People are curious about who writes these songs. And so, yeah, I mean.
There was many reasons, though, why people thought it might not work. There had already been a show called Nashville. There had already, and Hollywood can be, much like all forms of medium, a fairly predictable place in terms of what people expect and what's been done before. And we basically just sort of plowed through, and we said, we understand there's something called Nashville, but this is about how songs are created, not about the soap opera nature of, famous people per se.
We actually have a question. I'm looking at let's see, from Michelle. Is the podcast an old school scripted serial radio show, or is it more like a reality show? Thank you for your question. It is a scripted series. It's basically like listening to a TV show, but there's more authenticity around our project. I think it's like you get to hear Nashville instead of seeing it unfold on on TV, but I think it's very authentic to the world of songwriting. And that was something Miranda, her manager Marion went over the script with us, and Sloan at WME, and really, wanted to make sure that this was authentic, and that like if you're a songwriter in Nashville, you're not listening to it going like, oh yeah, right, that would never happen.
And also, basically the world of audio is very limiting in terms of, in many ways it's awesome because it's a great way to present people new music, but we had to figure out how many people could be in a scene without it being confusing, how you would organically tell the story in the writer's room. And sometimes in the world of podcasting, you really have to find your way into, especially with scripted, which is a brand new lane. You have these shows by Q Code and Wondery and Gimlet, which when they're done right are really cool. It's, if you listen to Carrier, it's all in a truck, or if you listen to Homecoming, it's all, done in these 3 different places. Your primary places were the music studio, performance venues, and making it feel like an indie film.
That was such a cool moment. I've learned a lot about sound design after, once we recorded everything and we were in post-production, and just making sure that there are footsteps where there should be footsteps, and making sure the characters sound far apart and then they walk closer together. There was so much dynamic that needed to go into the character or the actor's vocal performance or the VO work. But the sound design for this project was so much fun. But you have to listen to every second to really, for the listener and out of respect for them, because they're taking a chance on this. It's not new medium. It's just come back 100
new
years
old medium. Yeah, you can't really get lazy, because if you make someone invest into 3 episodes and listen all the way, and then it just falls off, you're like, wow, I just wasted a whole bunch of time.
Exactly. And so it was really important to me to make sure that all those details were in there, like a faucet turning on, or just the sounds of being in a kitchen in the morning cooking breakfast or whatever. And that was I guess it was before COVID started and quarantine started. We actually had an opportunity to record a scene live at Whiskey Jam here in Nashville. And Whiskey Jam, I just think, is such a rite of passage for every artist and songwriter that comes to Nashville. And so it was really important to me to have that as part of her story, Scarlett Sales' story.
And you performed as Scarlett I
performed as Scarlett Sales at the venue, at the bar, and we put Scarlett Sales on the flyer, and Ward played himself, and he's standing there on the stage with a script, and he told the audience what was going on. So we actually used the live footage from that show, and the scripted stuff and the audience applause and the music. It made that's my favorite scene of the whole thing.
And aside from the creative process, which we'll get back to in a second, I think a lot of the people here might be interested in, how we package this, how we got brands on board, how we got Nashville on board for this thing. Just one question at a time here is like, let's start with you and I knew after we record these first few songs, we needed an anchor in that town. So we, talk about how Nicole Gallion got involved and who she is. I'm sure anybody who's on this thing who is from Nashville might probably or likely know her already, but explain why we use that and how we package that into it.
Well, Nicole has written most of the songs that you hear on country radio, and we really wanted to make sure, again, that we had the blessing from someone like Nicole Gallion in Nashville, instead of being, 2 people from LA with this idea, and to really create this bridge between Nashville and LA and the world of acting and music and whatnot. So we got together with her to create 2 songs for the series, and one of them needed to be like our big Easter egg reveal song at the end that Miranda eventually cuts. And so the idea was, let's go in, and we don't really know. We know what kind of, this is where it got into the world of sync. We knew what we needed for the storyline. And so one of them needed to be kind of upbeat, sort of like a new age Sheryl Crow vibe. And then the other one, just needed to be kind of like a House That Built Me sort of song. so Jared and I flew to Nashville. We got together with Nicole, wrote these 2 songs. I didn't really know which direction we were going to go, but then as soon as we started writing Champion, it was like, this is it, and this would be perfect for Miranda. Didn't, you know.
As a songwriter, you have that moment in the room where you're like, okay, we have the concept now, and we can like just chill out for a second. But we assured her before we went in there, this is not a circus. We're coming in low key. And in that writing session, we not only had our meeting with Bobby Bones' management team, but like Warner Records, and we were filming it. And we're like, trust me, we're like really under the radar. Yeah, we're low key.
You had your documentary film crew with you.
She was, but so from there, just to give people the steps, like, scripted content right now for podcasting is like not really as big of a lane as the talk show formats or the Joe Rogans or the rest of it. And we really knew that we had to figure out if we're going to make this, we have to give people not only the best story, the best songs, but also, star power to get people in the tent. So after we had the songs from Nicole, you and I really started to go on this like scavenger hunt to put the pieces together, because we knew that when we were going to go to iHeart and the brand team there, they would say, well, that's great that you have this amazing story and all these songs, but how are we getting people, into this sort of tent here? So who were the first few conversations we had with casting and with music casting?
Bobby Bones and Nicole. On the songwriting side, Dennis Quaid, who plays my dad. I call him the Podfather. And then who else was I think Craig Robinson.
Craig Robinson was a big one. You wanted, that actually I saw a comment here, about the vocal coach and how that plays an important role in you finding your voice. Explain that character and how that even came about, because
that character is based off my vocal coach, Gary Katona. He's worked with everyone from Whitney Houston to Muhammad Ali, and his approach is very unique in that he talks about, basically tearing down the cobwebs and how we keep so much emotion tied up in our vocal cords. And so he really kind of helps you find your voice, literally and figuratively. And it's about building up the muscles around your vocal cords to feel more confident in your speech with actors and singers. And so this character, Apollo Joyner, played by Craig Robinson, I wanted him to be somebody that is kind of bi-coastal, ends up in Nashville, because that's real, like there was talk of, well, maybe he should be from Memphis. And I thought, no, like that's just too easy. Like it's more authentic for someone. There's so many people here from New York and LA that are just
people are moving to Nashville every day.
And so that was the idea of like, I feel like it created a great dynamic to the storyline of like, there's a scene where she arrives at his house and she's walking through his entryway, and there's photos of him and Oprah and him and Leonardo DiCaprio, and that's real. I mean, that's it's not like that happens every day, but that was real in to my knowledge of the world of doing vocal lessons, is that it's not just about singing, it's about finding your voice and the confidence in there. And so, yeah, I just, Gary Katona is wonderful. And he taught me a lot and shared a lot of stories with me about talent and that he's worked with. So that's who Pointers based off of.
Yeah, the specificity of it, I think, is, again, in this audio medium, much like a movie that is about how things are made, like All the President's Men. I just watched it again. It's about how an article is written. It's the process of everything that goes into it. This is really about how songs are made. And then, having people around it, your next few casting people are people who do work in music, like Rob Mays, who's, obviously not as big as Dennis, but then you had Billy Bob. How did those people come into the casting process in the foreground? And, how did you afford these people?
I didn't pay. Who paid them? Did we pay? No. I think whether you're Billy Bob Thornton or, whoever else was in our project. I mean, I think people like Billy Bob Thornton and Dennis, there so many members of our cast are musicians and actors, and I think that they are always wanting to create, no matter what the level is. It's not like any of us were doing this to, retire from it. And so I think that people like Billy Bob and Dennis, just when they hear something that's new and fresh and, also convenient, they didn't have to leave their house. We dropped off a mic. But I think that they are, especially Billy Bob, I think he's such a creator and innovator. And I think that this was just something that, I think just perked his ears with something different and to be a part of something new. So I think that's got a lot of our cast.
Yeah, a lot of people, I was surprised, we were experiencing a time where podcasting was all of a sudden becoming very popular and the deals were sort of ballooning in terms of what talent expected. But a lot of people came in with us and did it out of the passion of it because there was a great story there and the ability to be part of something cool. I will say though that a lot of what we've done is almost like radio theater from the 40s because we did go out with iHeart and try to find a big honking sponsor for this thing. So instead of us, there's two models in podcasting. I think that everyone should be aware of that. And I know that Tom probably wants me to talk a bit about the business of it too, but in podcasting, you either put something up, an audience comes, then you're in the CPM slipstream. To get in the CPM slipstream, it's very difficult. You have to have organically an audience coming in for every episode, 60,000, 100,000 or up. You look at the big podcasts like Rogan, Smartless, Call Her Daddy. Those have big organic audience. Those are the Howard Sterns. Those are the, Don Imuses of our time right now where, it's predictable. The audience is there. Brands go, great, let's put money there because we want to reach these people, that demographic. This was, again, much like the musical in reverse, this was branded entertainment straight out of the pages of like a Ben Silverman who basically gets the series funded, then makes the series. And Scarlett and I, two different parts of the process here. Obviously, I am a creator and a creative, but Scarlett also had to be a creator and an entrepreneur here. We were told, that in order to get a brand into this thing, we were going to have to quote unquote sing for our supper and figure out how to make this as appealing as possible. Talk about the relationship with Unilever and how that came about, because that really was, it was a nail biter to get this thing done. It was almost like making a film without financing until they came in.
I think that would be more my question for you. I was going to ask you how that came about.
Well, our ad sales team, Greg and Jeff, they had me behind the scenes on meetings with like iHeart and OMD on a weekly basis, just telling people what projects were coming up. So these are the people that buy media, whether it's like TV commercials, outdoor advertising, concert sponsorships, all those categories kind of went away during COVID. And even though we were a smaller company and a brand new startup, our team propped me up and they said, Jared, what's happening in media with celebrities? Now that touring isn't going on, now that film is shut down, now that, outdoor advertising isn't happening. And we talked about, hey, we're making blockbusters for your ears. And at which point Unilever said, oh, cool, tell us more about it. And what do we get if we advertise? So, ultimately iHeart, who can reach hundreds of millions of people through their network of podcasting and their radio waves, created a media package where Scarlett became much like, like Ronald Reagan smoking a parliament at a commercial break in the 1950s, or Fred Flintstone, or Lucille Ball promoting. So you basically read your ads and you also created extra content for them, right? Like, so you must have thought we were a little, we created this very high quality prestige piece. And then we're like, by the way, you're going to talk directly to the consumer. How did that, was that challenging? Had you really thought that you were going to be a pitch person on top of, the person making this?
It's really different than commercial. I've auditioned for commercials. I've been in commercials, and it was just felt like commercial work, just VO work. And the only thing I was worried about was that it was going to be too much of my voice, because I also narrate the podcast. But we put music under the commercial spots, and it turned out great. I mean, I was a little nervous about it, but I think it turned
They
out
were
fun.
very happy. And, again, you and I have been aligned at the right time, at the right place a few different times. We moved the stock price for that bizarre Taco Bell jingle, but, to have the CMO of Unilever go on their call with their investors and say, we're getting out of Facebook and Twitter with our investments right now because it's too unpredictable what's happening politically in this country, and we're going to put money into new media. And they were talking about John Legend and Make It Up As We Go. Like, I was sort of had a pinch me moment going, oh my gosh, after all these steps to put it together, it was a long path to market, but the hunch was correct that people would want this form of entertainment. It wasn't like we reinvented the wheel. We basically brought musicals to a brand new audio medium. And I would also say that the biggest sort of connectivity was also, there's always been connection between the music business and the film business. In fact, some of the biggest music publishing companies and masters holders in the world are Universal Film, Paramount Pictures, MGM. If you look through their catalogs, there's decades and decades of assets, everything from Trolls the movie to Wizard of Oz to everything. And the fact that it's very, very difficult to get a music deal for a brand new artist at a major label in Sony Nashville. The fact that your debut album is a soundtrack for an avatar character that you created of Scarlett is, to me, my mind was blown, because I spent most of my 20s trying to get a record deal and never did. And the fact that we set it up this way, and that your debut album had features from Lindsay L., Miranda, Tyler, did you even really process or think that was going to be a likely outcome, that you were going to have a record come out? No. And how could people discover the music in each episode? How does the music?
The music, how did we release it? We released 2 songs with the first episode, but we kind of released the music from the soundtrack trickled out along with the storyline, because we wanted the listener to hear the song being written and how it was written and what inspired that song, and then we would release the song. So in a way, even though I think what we're all missing is the experience of live music, because you create an experience with your listeners or your audience. And I think the way that we were telling the story of how these songs are written created an experience for our listeners, and that created a fan base out of the music, because they felt more attached to it, like they got to know it, kind of like a live experience.
It was a discovery platform, the same way that Lil Nas X got discovered off TikTok. Our premise was maybe people could discover music through this. And Michelle Shopt asked a question here: how the songs are used in the podcast, how do they get paid? So on the front part of the conversation, I was saying that it's very hard to license music for podcasting because it's just complicated. So we were licensing music from ourselves. We were setting an MFN rate. And if Scarlett, myself, and Nicole Galligan were, go ahead.
Perfect example of that was in the first episode, it starts out with Scarlett kind of driving down Interstate 40 in her car, and there's a song playing on the radio. And then in the same episode, she and her boyfriend Davis, played by Rob Mays, are performing at a bar, and we needed kind of like a fictional. We needed them to be playing like a big hit, like a big cover. And so instead of us licensing, Friends in Low Places or some song that we all know, we decided, well, we're songwriters. Let's just put in a different song that doesn't necessarily blend in with the soundtrack, but stands out as more country radio, kind of mainstream. And so we created this fictional radio hit, which Tyler Rich and I cut. And so it became a character in itself. A lot of these songs are characters in themselves throughout the story.
It really was like creating our own musical universe. And then, I'm seeing questions. I don't want to answer them in rapid succession just because these are business ones, but how can one monetize if they aren't able to get sponsors? In the podcast space, if you just decided to put up your own scripted radio drama or talk show, really what you could do is, upload it through a network like Anchor or Megaphone or Podbean or any of these places, and try to, my friend Jake Brennan, who was early in the podcast space, would just use, Google ads and Facebook ads to try and get an audience targeted towards, if you're doing a podcast about music or sports, trying to find sports fans, music fans, and building it organically. The algorithm certainly rewards repetition. So the more that we put up episodes, the better it would do. And Scarlett's and I's podcast was 1 per week for 8 weeks. So it was a short burst. The algorithm does not like that it ends after 8 or 9 episodes or even 10. If you look at Joe Rogan, he's got 52 a year. If you look at some of our other talk shows, we have 4 a week. And that's how you start growing your aggregate audience and creating a network effect. But there was also a question of how do we get a sponsor? I mean, that, Tom, we've seen even this, initiative that he has here. You go out to the world, you say, this is what we're building. This is the audience that we have. We would like you to participate, whether it's through donating product or amplifying as a marketing sponsorship or utilize, there's many ways into the advertising space. I've been fortunate enough that I've been on the side where we typically, our work for hire, we get paid. When Scarlett and I did the Taco Bell jingle, that was, we got paid for that. When we created this initiative created this almost like an indie film or like our own indie podcast, we found money to offset the costs and then further money to offset the costs through the recording deal. Those are certain ways that you could do it, but there is no right or wrong way. In fact, many of my favorite books on media have nothing to do with podcasting or film. There's an amazing book by David Byrne called How Music Works, where he explains the difference between releasing music through a major label, which he had done for like 30 plus years, versus using the Orchard or using, your own self-distribution mechanism. That's kind of where we are in podcasting. You can self-distribute. It's frictionless. It's barrierless. The same place Joe Rogan publishes podcasts, you can be on the same channel. That is odd because in television, you can't just decide to self-publish into NBC, ABC, or CBS. So it's really for anybody adventurous enough to go into the space, plenty of ways in, plenty of ways to monetize. And, before I get back to throwing more questions at Scarlett, says, how do you clear the music for use in podcasts? Well, right now, AskGap and BMI, there is an initiative for them to start collecting royalties. Very hard to track, very early days. Reminds me of when I started Jingle Punks and we were putting music in reality TV shows on nascent cable networks. Eventually, those nascent cable networks became some of the biggest distributors of money to AskGap, and how our business was built off Pawn Stars, American Pickers, and stuff like that. So we're in early with podcasting. Spotify is starting to really, create initiatives called Music and Talk, where when you talk, and if you did a countdown show, like if CMT had a podcast, someone would talk, the music plays, and it stops the talk stream and starts a music stream. They would count that as a stream, and then it would go back to talking. So there's all sorts of technologies and solutions that are going into how to monetize. But really the biggest upside for Scarlett, myself, or anyone else doing musicals would be if it's successful, if it becomes a big album or a hit comes from it and radio plays it. Or Scarlett, tell us what's going to happen with our grand plans for TV shows, and spin-offs and more seasons, because that's a big part of it as well, and the big why of why we're doing it.
Yes, I mean, the storyline, and it was a great way to test the marketplace and through a podcast. And so developing it on the TV side, we have a solid foundation to stand on and go back and have that conversation. We're currently working on season 2 of the podcast with TV development.
Mm-hmm. As well. But that's in the media space called the long tail. So our goal was to, get to marketplace with, if we spent $1, we would have loved to make $1.10. That's just, good business, and possibly even more. But the IP business and the world of music publishing is about getting past the $1.10 and getting people to utilize the piece of IP we created, the Make It Up As We Go brand in TV. And also, one of the fastest growing parts of touring prior to COVID was podcasting. And you and I discussed that very early on. So what's going to look like when this hits the stage? And by the way, do I get a part? Do I get to, perform on stage too? Or what happens with that?
Plain bass.
Oh, man.
Only upright. You have to tour with your upright.
Damn it.
No, I cannot wait to get this on the road and literally get the show on the road and tour this project. I mean, so many of our actors on the show are incredible musicians, and so we want to create the live, performance of this storyline and tour it.
I could see it, as 2 or 3 different ideas. I could see it performed like once on Broadway. I could see it as like what T-Bone Burnett did with Down from the Mountain, where it's just the music as a review going, this is the music from Make It Up As We Go, featuring, all these great players. And I could also see it, honestly, like, it sounds wild, but like, I think there's going to be a huge appetite for live experiences when this is over. I could see brands doing pop-up version of this musical. I could see, Vegas has never had a Nashville-based blockbuster, standalone entity the way that they have Love or Le Cirque du Soleil and stuff like that. I think that people would really love these podcast residencies being performed in places like Vegas or in places that where entertainment is available, whether, I hate to say it, like cruise ships or hotels and stuff like that. But I could see the reason why owning the IP around musicals have been so lucrative for Andrew Lloyd Webber and other people like that is really the IP and the licensing. I don't know if everyone knows this, but Andrew Lloyd Webber, I think, is the number 1, 2, or 3. He's up there as one of the biggest holders of copyrights of all time, next to like Paul McCartney and Elton John. And that comes from, I've created something. If people want access to it and to perform it, they can certainly use it. And people put on productions of Les Miserables and Phantom of the Opera all around the world. And really it's, everyone always says it takes 4 years to get to market at best. When you create a musical, we managed to get a musical off the ground in under a year based on a new media.
Right. I mean, the idea was developed for a couple of years. So I feel like we're a little bit ahead of the game as far as, the storyline and characters and everything. But I know that David Hudgens and I spoke about how incredible it would be to have this as a, Broadway type musical. And then it was like, okay, let's just get back and make sure we have a good podcast at least, and then we'll start from there. So.
Yeah. So, Tom, do you want us to field more questions or right now? How do you want us to, I'm seeing a bunch of things down here. Scarlett, are there any juicy questions that you want to?
Ooh, I like this one. Well, this is for you. Where is live streaming going in 2021?
Thank you for the question, Scarlett, and whoever asked that.
It's not from me. I'm sorry. It's from Nathan.
Got it. Well, oh my gosh. Well, this is I'm going to try not to be verbose because I have lots of thoughts on it. It's going to be, and I hope that I'm right. And this will either be like a Babe Ruth pointing to the fence home run answer that a year from now they'll be like, oh, that's great, or they'll be like, what an idiot. But I think it's going to be the biggest media shift we've seen in our lifetime since the internet. My whole reason why I'm in podcasting has as much to do with content and music as it does to do with technology. The advent of the Google HomePod, the shrinking of your cellular phone, the disappearing of screens and keyboards is really the why as to why people are consuming more streamable content and audio content as a result. In China, right now, cell phones are 3 or 4 years ahead of our cell phone technology. One of the biggest media companies in the world is a podcast business called Himalaya out of China. They just raised $1 billion at a $16 billion valuation. And what they do on Himalaya and Shimalaya is they listen to people just talk. They listen to people talk in the way that people are doing it on Clubhouse right now. Social audio might end up being one of the biggest shifts in media in your lifetime. we've come all this way in 30, 40 years from Hewlett Packard's, offices in Silicon Valley, where the exact same cell phone technology that I have right here was available in 1977. We had the exact same ability to do touch screens. We had the exact same ability to move a mouse and an object across the screen. And we did that, again, from just like thinking about it from a media point of view, to get you to consume more media, to get you to buy toilet paper and gum and toothpaste and order things on Amazon. Where I think live streaming and audio content is going is more in the realm of audio. You're seeing Spotify invest heavily, a few $100 million, if not $1 billion in investments last year. Their deal with The Ringer, Joe Rogan. You just saw Wondery get sold for a few $100 million to Amazon. And you have to ask yourself in a good way, why would Spotify, Amazon, Apple, Netflix, Universal want to invest in audio when they already have very strong video divisions? I don't know the answer, but I think we're in the right zone. Obviously we're going forwards to go backwards. Scarlett and I do want to create TV shows off of our audio ideas, but I think that you're going to see a lot of Hollywood shifting into audio. And I think that our business plan and our business got fast-tracked by at least 3 years because of what happened last year with the shutdown. The fact that we're now working with, Anthony Anderson, Billy Bob Thornton, Stephen King, all these different people right now that would typically be, and musicians like 24K Golden, Ian Dior. These people are just available because touring has shut down and the film business has shut down. And that's not to say that when everything comes back, audio will go away. It goes to show that we've basically just been fast-tracked, and the medium, which, a lot of analysts were like, is this going to slow down because people aren't commuting in their cars, or less people can listen to NPR in the morning, or less people can listen to the Daily. A bunch of things happened at once, including people burning out on screen time and screen content. You spend your entire day as an entrepreneur right now sitting in the Zoom environment, which Tom and Scarlett and everyone here, I think, will admit is sometimes exhausting. It's exciting because you can connect with people, and I'm extremely impressed with, how many people, have pulled up to this Zoom and how we're interacting with them. But I think that there's also a huge want to improve one's brain after a long day of that, whether it's reading an audible book or listening to an audio drama and experiencing media in a different way. And
well, especially when I'm also isolated. I mean, I like to listen to a podcast. I like the crime ones, especially Sam Gutstadt's.
The body True Crime Sam.
Plug. That was a plug. No, but I think it's, when we're also isolated, it makes us feel like we're still connected to something that's a social experience, even if you're not in the conversation, but listening to two other people talk naturally, unscripted, by your choice. You went to that podcast, you went to that episode and tuned in. So I kind of feel like I don't think any of us knew where this was going when we all went into quarantine, but in a way, I think it's helped people that are feeling, incredibly isolated.
Yeah.
That's my thought.
Yeah.
I went smartest person in the room.
There you go. You really did it. You proved that. Is this a game show? One of us wins, one of us loses. You won the smartest person in the room.
You told me that there was a money or like a reward.
There's a prize. Tom's going to send you a prize after. I will say that for brand building, for cutting through the sort of noise of media, audio has proven to do that for us. Aside from Scarlett's project last year, we launched 2 musicals last year in a very short amount of time. Scarlett's development was a bit longer than what we did with Halloween, and Halloween got the benefit of a bunch of artists that weren't on tour. So that was with Machine Gun and Ian Dior, and that was more of us building our Marvel Cinematic Universe out of creating almost comic book adventures. This year we've already launched several properties in the talk show space. The Nashville staples of the Cyrus family. We launched a weed-centric podcast with Tish and her daughter this morning called Sorry We're Stoned, which we're excited about. We had our true crime one last year with Sam, and it's interesting. It's never in a million years did I think I would go from working in visual medium, like starting my career in television, and it never in a million years. In 2000, if you asked me if I'd be working in a version of radio, I would have said you're nuts. I would have thought maybe I would be playing in a cover band on a riverboat somewhere, playing music, but not but not this. And it makes me wake up every day feeling like we run a Hollywood studio in the 1940s. That's the only thing I can really equate it to. We have, we can think of an idea on a Monday, green light it on a Thursday, and go into production, the following week, in a way that's exactly how, MGM ran their musicals in the early days. And I would say, lastly, that the reason it's also very exciting is we've taken investment from two different parts of the media world that I really love and admire. The MGM investment allowed us to have connectivity to the TV and film world, and Primary Wave, as our music publisher investment, allowed us to, when Scarlett writes a song for these things, we immediately know that we have an admin collected on that. If there are laws and rules that change regarding publishing, it's all neat and tidy. And Scarlett, what is going to happen for what's going to happen?
I was like,
great. I like Michelle.
Over here. This is so nice.
Not you, Jerry. Hey, I haven't let my hair down yet, though. You haven't seen the whole thing. But Scarlett, what's going to happen with you? Are you going to put out any more music ahead of the podcast next? Because you did put out something over the holidays. Do you want to plug that?
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, if you're still in the holiday spirit and you want to listen to Christmas music, I did a song with Jared and I wrote it called Howdy Christmas, and Haley and I cut it, Haley Witters. And so that just came out before, the end of the year. And then right now I'm just doing these songwriting sessions over Zoom, which isn't as bad as I thought it was going to be. So right now I'm just writing and developing season 2. Make it this week out.
Incredible. Tom,
what are you going to do?
What am I going to do? I'm like, one of the Muppets. I'm just like this all day. Trying to raise money, create new properties, write new songs. We have Uncle Drank coming out. We have Missed Riffs. I can plug away all day, but enough about me.
Yeah, that's enough.
Well, Jared, I'll jump in here. I want to ask a question that was asked actually in the Q&A by Andrea Smith about Miranda's song, Weight of These Wings, referencing a friend of hers named Charlotte. Scarlett, could that have been you by chance? Is that who she was writing about?
Let me see. What was the question?
It's in the Q&A.
Right.
It's probably a coincidence, that one, because Charlotte
David
come into her world.
Wrote my character and named my character Charlotte Sales, so I think it's just a coincidence.
Serendipity is what we call that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, listen, we are getting to the point of needing to stop. I just want to thank you both for being, frankly, amazing. You're entrepreneurs. You have figured out a way to make some incredible lemonade during the biggest lemon season of our lifetimes. And it's inspiring and it's informative. And I know there's a lot of people in the music industry that have watched this today that are high-fiving you virtually and high-fiving me on my phone. This is fantastic. So thank you. And I want to encourage you to keep doing it. Keep bending the rules. I can't wait for the musical. And I know you need to write into the script, a music industry headhunter. I know one. And I've got the perfect face for radio, so I'm there.
Thank you so much for having us. We love telling the story, and it's really, I love it when people, just get what we're trying to do and allow us to talk about it. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much for having us. I was really looking forward to this.
Well, cool.
And thank you all who tuned in. This is
right on. Well, thanks again, folks. Everyone stay safe and be nice to each other, and we're going to get through this.
Yes, we are.
All right. Take care.
Bye, everybody. Thank you.
Bye.